everything I do is
Yes.
so adolescent. Just call me Mr. Bunny Crackers and Carrots too. So this is Yarrow for High at Nine News. Happy Monday morning to our viewers. My article today: extremely rare pot discovered 50 years ago is finally available in California. This is from SFGate. In 1970, researchers at the University of Oxford were investigating a cannabis sample when they found a chemical that had never been known before to science. It wasn't THC or CBD, the two most famous compounds created by cannabis plants. They called this new compound tetrahydrocannabinol, a mouthful of a word usually shortened to THCV. For the next 50 years, THCV quietly developed a mythical status amongst cannabis connoisseurs, earning nicknames like the sports car of weed or Weedarow because it was rare and allegedly had astonishing effects. The few people who experienced it claimed that THCV pot kept them awake while reducing their hunger. Cannabis hunters traveled across the world and risked their lives looking for THCV, yet no one seemed to be able to find a consistent supply of it. Now, that's all changing. THCV is becoming increasingly available, particularly in California, where the legal weed market has become one of the best places in the world to find this rare pot product. Adults in California can buy THCV mints infused with matcha, THCV pre rolled joints, THCV pills, and espresso flavored THCV shots. The boon is thanks mostly to two sources. The federal legalization of hemp in 2018 has greatly expanded the amount of synthetic cannabinoids in America, making it possible for companies to buy lab-made THCV in bulk. Cannabis farming companies have also made rapid advances in growing pot plants that are naturally rich in THCV. Elizabeth Rice, the sales director for Kiva, an edibles company, said now that THCV is available, retailers are clamoring to order the new products. The cannabis industry has been excited about selling THCV for years, Rice told SFGate, but only recently has there been a stable enough supply of the compound. I have retailers going, "Can you pre order this? Can you order it now?" That never happens, Rice said. Kiva launched two THCV gummy products this month. The new candies contain THCV alongside THC and other ingredients you normally see in energy drinks, like B vitamins, L-theanine, and caffeine. Named Focus and Energy, both products promise to give customers the stimulating effects THCV has long promised. As with nearly all claims relating to cannabis, there is a major caveat. None of these products have been proved to have any specific effects, nor have they been evaluated by any Food and Drug Administration clinical trials. Without human testing on specific products, no one can definitively say what THCV does or does not do, but there's enough evidence to make scientists excited about THCV's possibilities. A brief overview of the science behind the high. Nearly all cannabis compounds act on a specific type of receptor that regulates psychological processes like metabolism, memory, and pain, and is heavily concentrated in our brains. THC, the most common cannabis compound, particularly activates this receptor, thus often having the effect of dulling pain and increasing short term thoughtfulness. I thought short term forgetfulness. Like, where's my keys? THCV, however, can have the opposite effect on this receptor, effectively turning it down. That could be why the compound is associated with what sounds like anti weed effects, like keeping people awake instead of putting them to sleep, or reducing hunger instead of giving people munchies. A very small clinical trial in 2016 that tried to evaluate THCV's mental effects found that THCV appeared to reduce forgetfulness. Another clinical trial published last month found that the compound was associated with an increase in energetic feelings. There are also potential health benefits related to metabolism. Studies using rodents have found that THCV can reduce appetite, body weight, and resting glucose levels, all signs that it could be a candidate to treat metabolic disorders like diabetes. That research was further validated in one of the only placebo-controlled clinical trials on THCV, a clinical trial published in 2016 that found that people with type 2 diabetes who were given THCV had lower fasting glucose levels, which are a predictor of the disease. It bears repeating, none of these studies prove that THCV or any products containing THCV have specific effects on humans. There have simply been too few studies with too few small sample size to produce conclusive results. These early studies are why the pot industry is so excited about bringing THCV products to market despite its high cost. Nicole Daranani, Sorry, Nicole, I ruined your last name. A sales manager at Kiva told SFGate that THCV is the most expensive cannabis compound on the market, costing 10 times the price of conventional THC. But at last, the supply is there. California is seeing a wave of THC products, largely thanks to Phylos Bioscience, a breeding company based in Oregon that developed cannabis plants that tested over 20% THCV by weight, according to test results shared with SFGates by Phylos. That's a previously unheard of potency of THCV cannabis. These new plants are one of Kiva's THCV sources, according to the last name already butchered. Philo CEO Ralph Reich told SFK that the company is working with a handful of cannabis companies in California to supply the market. He said Phylos is focusing on THCV because it appeals to consumers who are looking for energizing and motivating benefits from cannabis instead of just getting high. He added that the company is funding a clinical trial in California to test exactly how THCV affects humans, with results expected in early 2024. There are new benefits people want to get from cannabis, and this seemed to create a new category of consumption, he said. THC has been intriguing scientists and connoisseurs for decades, even if still no one knows exactly what it does to people. Now that it's becoming widely available, answers could finally be found on the horizon in California. This is Yaro Kubrin, High at Night News, Monday morning. What do you guys think?
It sounds interesting, but also it just sounds like the constant race. We can't hear you, Jay. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Matthew. Go ahead.
I was just saying this just sounds like constant race by the .com capitalist. Just cockroach, core the center out and destroy everything and move on. Mindset of like, oh, the weed game's falling out. Now it's CBD. Now it's CBN. Now it's THCV. Now it's the next one. Really, it's like, listen to the message in the cannabis plant about community, right relation, generativity, and sharing. It's not about finding some cannabinoid and cornering the market and making all of the money and having 3 fucking vacation houses and everybody else gets to live under an underpass and eat fucking dirt. Mm-hmm. It's just the same thing over and over again. I don't discount the effects of THCV, but you can hear it in that lady quoted, how she's just giggling and twiddling her little fingers over how expensive THCV is. To me, it's just distasteful at best.
I mean, do we think that there's going to be some big promotion for THCV over Valentine's Day?
You guys,
dietary
THCV has been here for a very long time. It's really prominent in Durban Poison. Mm-hmm. It's in Jack Herrera. It's in a lot of the cultivars that have strong presence of limonene. And so this is not new. First of all, it's not. I have seen some cultivars that produce or yield test results up in the teens when it comes to the THCV cannabinoid, which is really exciting. And those flowers look atrocious. Have you ever seen what a high THCV flower looks like? It looks almost like hemp.
Yeah, they don't look amazing. They're not sexy.
And it doesn't have a really great taste to it either. So anyway, just throwing that out there that it's not extremely rare. I don't know who the hell thought they just discovered it, but they're wrong.
Well, the article says that it goes back 50 years here in Northern California. Obviously, California has gotten all of its genetics from other regions and areas, and people coming into the Emerald Triangle to be able to theoretically more safely cultivate cannabis. I think that we should break this apart into a couple different buckets. First bucket is, I think, goes back to sort of what Matthew St. Germain said, which is, anybody who's choosing to talk about or present cannabinoids as singular things that are going to have a positive effect on the body are really taking away that sort of full plant extract, that full spectrum, that entourage effect. THCV or any of these cannabinoids expressed as something by itself is probably not how Mother Nature intended the human body to interact with these cannabinoids. And so it's hard to really think about and talk about these isolated because they weren't necessarily intended to be isolated. That's first bucket. For me, the second bucket comes to laboratory created cannabinoids. There are about 7 companies that I'm aware of from Emeryville to South San Francisco to San Diego to the company in Boston that are all running at creating THC and other cannabinoids in a laboratory. And so some of them use yeast, some of them are using algae, some of these things are farting out cannabinoids, some of them are burping out cannabinoids. But this idea of being able to make these rare cannabinoids in a laboratory setting, I think with the cost of these rare cannabinoids, is still a justification for running at a non-farming method, a non-extraction method from biomass at trying to create rare cannabinoids. And I like that some of these companies are still trying to do this, because I do believe that at some point we're going to figure out the cure for cancer. And when that happens, there may be an opportunity for us to manipulate the ratios of cannabinoids to each other and then still come up with something that's close to or equivalent to a full plant extract, but in ways that has been manipulated either based on the cannabinoid or based on someone's genetic proclivities, right? So I like that, okay? And then the final thing is that, and I just want to say with that, we like to talk about how sun-grown cannabis has less impact because it's not grown indoors and we're not using a massive carbon footprint. But there is a world where sun-grown cannabis and acres of cannabis is still acres and acres and acres that could have been in food production. So I'm optimistic that potentially there are some laboratory-created cannabinoid methodologies that actually are going to be a net benefit in terms of land use, water use, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and might even have less of a footprint than outdoor cannabis. And then the final thing is THCV, right? So like, I love THCV because anything that's an appetite suppressant, Americans, we sure do love to get a little too rotund and eat maybe a little bit too much fatty food and maybe not spend as much time on our exercise machines. And so unlike many other countries, yeah, we still do have a waddle problem, right? And so is there a way in which we can find a plant-based approach to maybe eating a few less In-N-Out burgers? And can that have a positive effect on health outcomes more broadly in this country? I'm not mad at that. And I think that little teeny thin Virginia Slim style pre-rolls with THCV that are appetite suppressants, I think there's places in the market for that. I really do. In terms of the flower not looking good or smelling good, cannabis users are still very much about curb appeal, whether that's the smell, the look, the taste, the flavor. It's something they want to interact with. It's like the coffee drinker who wants to grind their own beans and use a French press and isn't necessarily going for the pods or the crups or the Nespressos. So I think that anything that doesn't look and smell good is going to not necessarily have as much traction in the market until there's really solid data behind its efficacy. This is Yaro Kubrin, High at 9 News, Monday morning.
Man, Yarrow, that was a mouthful.
There's a reason why THCV strains down in Orange County can't really be found. They get plucked off the shelf as soon as they hit. There's a real belief down there. There's a real belief.
Is this only in Orange County, or is this in other places like San Diego
places too? Places where gastric bypass surgery exceeds 15% of the per capita.
Well, that'd be in LA.
It's something that is commonly mentioned when I talk with my friends who own retail down in SoCo.
When they say roll of fatty, they're talking about the volume that you're smoking, not the person who's ingesting it, right?
Oh, man.